up, gorgeous people? It's Amber. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this alien abduction costume for my nephew. They sent me a photo of what the costume looked like and said, hey, can you make this? We can't find it anywhere. Is there any way that you can pull this off? And I was like, sure. No problem. I looked at it real quick and I thought, yeah, that sounds easy enough. I can do this no problem. Well, when I looked at the photo, what I wasn't noticing at first was that he was the kid in the pajamas, like screaming that he was being abducted. So I was thinking I just needed to make like this alien cape thing, super easy. The face was easy, super quick, no big deal. Well, once I looked at the photo and realized that he needed to be the kid in the pajamas, I was like, okay, this is going to be a little bit harder than I thought, but I did manage to pull it off. You are going to see all of the troubles that I had making this costume, and I hope that this inspires you if you decide to make a costume like this or a different costume to not give up, because I did not give up. In the end, obviously you can see by my thumbnail that I figured it out, but it was not easy. So without further ado, let's just get into how I made this thing. Okay guys, materials are in the description box below. We're going to start with this $5 cape that I bought at Family Dollar, and I'm going to seam rip off that front design because obviously I don't need it. Then I'm going to take the pajamas and I'm going to seam rip out the top part of the shoulder area and the rear part of the sleeve. So only the rear part of the sleeve and the top part of that shoulder area on both sides I'm going to seam rip out. Now that I'm back, I have the entire front part of the cape open, and I will have the entire back part of the pajamas open. So what I'm going to do is stitch those two parts together. So I'm going to put them right sides together, and what was the front of the cape will now be the front of the pajamas. And then obviously the rear of the cape will still be the rear of the cape. So we're just going to go ahead and pin all of that together, and it lined up perfectly for me. I had a size 14 pajama and a size large kids cape, and it all worked out well. So I have it all pinned together, and as always, I always suggest you turn it right side out to make sure everything looks the way that you think that it should, and then you just go ahead and take it to your sewing machine and stitch it together. Okay, so now I have everything stitched together, and yes, you do want to have two sleeves because the other set of sleeves, the cape sleeves, are the alien sleeves, and then the pajama sleeves are the ones that you're going to use for your own arms, okay? So that's how this is all going to work. Everything's looking pretty good so far. Now I'm going to have to take what was the front or the rear part of the pajamas and the front of the cape. I'm going to need to go ahead and stitch a line down the center there because I will have an opening in the front of the costume. So of course you don't want that, it to be like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a straight stitch all the way across that area just to secure everything in place. So there you go. Everything's secure. So I'm going to go ahead and go in the center of the pajamas here, and I'm just going to cut off that excess. So what was the rear part of the pajamas and what was the front part of the cape, I'm just going to cut off all that excess now that I have stitched those two areas together so they don't have an opening in the costume. A little confusing. I hope you're following along. I'm doing my best to explain this. Okay, so now we are looking at the hood of the cape here, and I cut out, sort of looks like an alien head. Why not? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trace it on this 1-inch foam. Now, at the time I was doing this, I wasn't sure if I needed 1 or 2 pieces. So you're going to see me trace this twice. So in the end, I do end up using both pieces. But if you have 2-inch foam, then you do not need 2 pieces. You're only going to need 1 piece for this project. So I'm going to go ahead, take my scissors, cut this out. But just so you know, an electric knife works really well to cut out foam. But I have these really thick, heavy-duty scissors that's actually, you could use them for cardboard and things like that. And they cut this foam really well. So I just used those. But I also wanted to notate that an electric knife works really well when cutting foam. Love how I keep moving the camera. So professional, these videos. So I'm going to go ahead and put that underneath the cape. I'm taking a look at it to see if I just need the 1 piece because at the time I was not sure. Looking at it, I'm like, it's not full enough, so I decided to cut the other piece. So I end up using 2 1-inch pieces, but again, if you have 2-inch foam, you will only need 1 2-inch foam piece. And these are just like the cushions that you get for seats. You know, you could buy these at Joann Fabrics. They can be pricey, so make sure you have a coupon or get them when they're on sale. Now that I've got both pieces cut out, I'm checking it out. I'm happy with it. We're gonna move on to the next step. Okay, so now you're gonna see me take this wooden spoon and put it in the center. I end up not using that because it just was so not working out, but I'm gonna go ahead and stitch my 2 1-inch pieces together. Now you could glue them together if you want to, but to me, the glue takes way too long to dry, and I don't know, I feel like it can come apart, so I just didn't want this costume falling apart on him while he was wearing it, so I decided to stitch the 2 pieces together. But again, you can skip this part if you have 2-inch foam. This is only if you are using 1-inch foam pieces that you need to stitch these parts together. Okay, so I'm at the very end here, and you're gonna see me secure that wooden spoon in so good. So I'm going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, securing this wooden spoon in that I end up not using. Awesome, right? So if you are using 2 1-inch pieces and you're stitching them together, don't use a wooden spoon. You don't need it. Totally not necessary. Just skip that part. Huge mistake on my part, but of course at the time I didn't know that. So I'm gonna shake it, make sure it's good. We're gonna move on. Okay, so I'm tracing this green spandex with that same headpiece that I just used for the foam. And I got this at Joann Fabrics for like $3 for the half yard. Now, honestly, you can just go ahead and use felt for this. You don't have to use the green spandex. I chose the green spandex because I wanted like that shiny look for the alien, but you know, in hindsight, this stuff was so difficult to work with. I wish I had just bought the felt, but I mean, either way, whatever fabric you can find, a cotton fabric, felt, whatever you want to use, you know, will be fine for this part of it. Okay, so we have the head completely cut out. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my foam piece, sit it on top. Everything's looking good. So I grab my cape and I'm going to stick it underneath the cape, make sure everything's working out, you know, before I move on to the next part. So yeah, love how I keep moving the camera. So awesome. All right. So anyway, I'm sticking everything underneath the cape to make sure it's looking good. When I decide that everything seems to be working well, I go ahead and I'm going to pin that face that I just cut out. I'm pinning it to the cape because that is obviously going to become the alien head. So I'm pinning that face to that round part of the cape. I'm just going to pin it all the way around to the points, like, I can't go too far because I have to be able to stick that foam piece in. So I'm leaving an opening at the bottom to be able to stick that foam piece in. And then after I sew this part with my sewing machine, I'm going to go back through and do an invisible stitch to secure the rest in place. So I'm getting my last pins in here, and then as always, guys, I always turn things right side out to make sure everything's looking the way that I think it should before I sew it together. Okay, turned it right side out, looking good. Let's sew together. Okay, all sewn together here, stick the foam piece back in there, then secure the remaining parts that you see there that are not secure with an invisible stitch. Okay, so now that that's all done, I'm ready to start working on the face. So I cut out like a teardrop shape for the eyes, and I just freehanded this. There's no like template or anything like that. So I'm using the excess fabric that was left over from the cape, and I'm going to cut out the eyes. and the nose and the mouth. So all of those pieces are going to be cut out with this excess fabric that was left over from the cape. And this fabric was really hard to work with as well. And again, a felt would have worked out great, but I was trying to utilize all parts of the materials that I was working with. Okay, ready to go. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and secure the eyes on with some Fabri-Tac. You can use whatever glue that you want, E6000, hot glue, whatever. I just wanted to use the Fabri-Tac because I wanted everything to be nice and smooth and flat. And sometimes with hot glue it gets a little lumpy, so that's why I decided to use the Fabri-Tac for this part of it. Perfect. Looking good. Now I have a mouth and the nose that I need to secure cut from the same fabric. And for the nose, I'm using some super glue because it's so small. I did not think that I'd be able to pull that off with a Fabri-Tac. So I went ahead and just used the super glue for that part. And then I'll use the Fabri-Tac for the mouth. You don't have to do a mouth. In the stock photo that they sent me, there was no mouth, but I thought it looked better with one, so why not? So I'm just going to go ahead, get my Fabri-Tac glue, secure that mouth on there, and then the alien head is pretty much done. So I thought. I was so excited thinking, oh man, this is rolling really good, everything's great. Yeah. That spoon just did not work out for me. And I tried several different ways. A lot of footage that you're not even going to see in here of the things that I tried to make that spoon work. And it wasn't happening. Okay, so now I'm moving on to the hands because I had played with the head for a really long time at this point. So I'm like, yeah, let's just get the hands done. So I'm just, roughly tracing my hand, but making it extra big, than what my hand is. Because I do need to stitch these in place onto the cape. So I'm not going for perfect hands here. This is an alien, guys. I'm not going for perfect, human hand fingers. It's an alien. So why does everything have to be perfect? Yeah, I wasn't going for perfect at all. And you'll see that when they're completed, that there's nowhere near perfect. And that's not the look I was going for. So you're going to see me flip them, the other way so that I can get the other hand done. So obviously it's going to need to be opposite from the one that you just traced. So that's all that I'm doing here, and I'm using that as my template for the remaining pieces that I need to cut for the hands. You're going to need 4 pieces all together because you're going to add some polyfill in the center of it to beef them up a little bit. So here's all 4 pieces. I'm just going to pin them together, take them to my sewing machine and sew them together. Now I ended up making the fingers a little bit too small, so I couldn't even get polyfill in them, but you know what? It looked fine when it was done. I wasn't even gonna worry about it. Was not about to stitch them again. So over it, I was done. So here's me just sticking the polyfill into the hands, and I tried to, stick them in the fingers with that stick, but that didn't work. So I gave up on it and just left it the way it was. Moving on, done. Looking good to me. Looks like alien hands to me. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the hands in place and just kind of make sure that you're looking at your own hands to see how they should be shaped. If that's what you want to do, again, this is an alien, so do whatever you want, but I was making them like the same direction as our hands. So I'm just going to take that to my sewing machine, stitch all that down, good to go. So now that all that's done, my pajamas were a little bit too long because my nephew's an older kid. So I went ahead and just cut the bottom off of them so that they weren't dragging the ground, And then I wanted to add for those sleeper pajamas, how they have that little white bottom with the, the little dots on it. I actually had some of that fabric at home. Surprising, right? So I just cut out a piece that sort of looked like a slipper, close enough, whatever. It's a Halloween costume, I'm not stressing. So I went ahead and traced out another one. I'm gonna cut that out, and that's what I'm gonna use to seal the bottom part of the pajamas. Okay. So now that part's done, now I'm just going to go ahead, take them over to the holes at the bottom of the pajamas. I'm going to pin them into place, right sides together, take them to the sewing machine and sew them together. Yeah, I'm showing you here. I should have just turned the whole thing inside out. It would have been a lot easier to pin together. So I'm just showing you here. Yeah, make sure you turn it inside out first. That was a really stupid mistake on my part, but you know, I was extremely tired at this point, so I was just trying to get it done. Okay, looking good. So here they are, sewn on, looking close enough. Here we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick the, well, it's supposed to be like a polyfill, but I didn't have any, so I'm using buffalo snow that I had left over from Christmas. You know, it all works the same. Who cares? So I'm filling this with the buffalo snow, but you can use polyfill or the fill from a pillow that you have that you're not using anymore, whatever you want to use to fill this up to make it look more like that's your feet in there. That's the idea for the costume, even though everybody knows that's not the case, but you know, that's what we're trying to do here. Don't want to stick in too much because remember, you don't want to carry around the weight of that, you know, it to be super heavy. You're going to be carrying the weight of this around on the front part of your body. So, you know, just stick in enough to make it look close enough. And you really just need to do the bottom part because you're going to be filling out the top part with your own arm and chest. So you don't need to worry about that part of the costume. So I'm just going to finish filling in the bottom part here to where I think it looks good, but it's not too heavy. And then we're going to move on to the next part. And if you have pajamas that already have feet in them, then you can skip that whole part, of course. I wasn't able to find any for a kid that is his age, you know, to buy at the store. I was lucky I found this size at the store, and I bought this at Family Dollar, so I really got lucky there. So I have it all completely filled, looking pretty good. And I end up sticking the parts that I just cut off the bottom. I end up sticking those on the inside and just hand stitching them in 3 parts, just so that that polyfill isn't exposed on the inside of the costume. I don't have footage of that, but that's what I did. Okay, so to make this look a little bit more like real pajamas, I just take some needle and thread and I just weave it in and out, in and out, in and out, pull it as tight as I possibly can to kind of make it look like, you know, your feet are in pajamas kind of thing. Yeah, it's not exactly accurate, but you know what, guys? It's close enough. Again, we're working on a Halloween costume. He's going to wear it one time and that's going to be it. So I am not going to stress too much about it. I think I'm getting the point across by doing this much. So I'm just going to pull everything tight and tie it off when I'm at the very end here, and this part of the process is done. So you're pretty much done with the bottom part of your costume. The only part that's going to be left is getting that darn head to stick up behind you. And I cannot tell you how long that took me to figure out. And I'm sure there's probably people screaming at me like, you should have just done this in the first place. But, you know, I just wasn't getting it. So anyway, let's move on. So I'm going to go ahead and stick some Velcro onto the hands so that I can stick those in place, because originally I was going to stitch them down, but I found it was hard to get in and out of the costume that way. So I decided to just add Velcro so that you can unzip the front completely. Now, I ended up cutting the hood part off. That was part of my problem. So I just cut that head completely off of the, you know, the cape, because that was part of the reason why I was having so much trouble making this work. So here I'm showing you that I was going to stitch it to the top. Yeah, that didn't work. So this was what finally ended up working. I found a wider piece of wood. So I'm just going to take it, glue it on. I had my fingers crossed because I wasn't sure if it was going to work. So I'm just hot gluing it into place, and I'm going to put a book on top of there so that, you know, while the glue dries, it secures. So once I did that, I'm using the leftover part of the pajamas, and I'm just making a square because that's going to be the pocket for that wide piece that I just showed you. So I'm making a pocket that I'm going to attach to the cape, and that's what ends up securing this thing in place. I was so excited when I finally figured it out. So I'm going to grab the cape, and then on the inside of the cape, on whichever side you want that head to be sticking out of, you pick whatever side, you're going to stitch down what's going to become the pocket for that wood piece that you just glued to the back of the alien head. So the reason why the wooden spoon wasn't working, obviously because it was too narrow and small, and it just wasn't holding up such a wide, bulky piece, and that just wasn't registering in my head for, you know, obviously a couple days because now I have this lovely pink sweatsuit on that you see here. So now I'm just pinning the pocket into place. There it is, looking good. I'm just going to stitch that all the way around. And I want to secure the rest of the cape onto the wood piece. So I thought that I was going to use this super glue and it would work well. Well, that was an epic fail. Add it to my list of fails with this costume. So I end up just taking the trusty hot glue gun and just using that. And that ends up securing this cape in place onto the wood piece. Yeah, that was a thumbs down. Here we go, hot glue. Yes, let's do that. So we're just going to secure that cape into place onto the wood board that we're going to use to stick into the pocket so that the head hangs up over the shoulder area. So this is looking really good at this point. I'm so excited. I feel confident. Yes, finally figuring this out. So I also take it and turn it upside down, and then I just run a piece of glue down the back, across the back there, just to, you know, keep everything secure in place because you don't want things falling off. I mean, you know how kids ram jam stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that it was, you know, glued down, good to go. Okay, once I got all of that done, I take some black paint, and I just paint the board because I kind of wanted everything to be, you know, good to go. So once this board is painted, you are literally done with the costume. I'm so pumped. I am so excited that I finally figured this out, and it was a roller coaster ride. But enjoy the photos at the end. Thanks for watching. So there it is, guys. That's how you make an alien abduction costume. Well, that's how I made an alien abduction costume. Obviously, you can see all of the struggles that I had was with the head. I was not sure how to make that head stand up and be behind my shoulders so that it was like the alien abducting him, and it was so incredibly frustrating. So as you can see from the video footage, I had different clothes on because I had to walk away from this thing like a couple of times and just sleep on it. So if you're ever working on something and you run into a problem and you're just trying all these things and nothing's working, sometimes it's better to just walk away, sleep on it, and come back with a fresh set of eyes, because that's what ended up working for me in the end. Now, granted, I probably slept on it for 2 nights because I was working on other costumes in between, but I'm just saying it's definitely best to walk away from something if it's not working and just come back with a fresh set of eyes, and then most likely you're going to figure out a way to make it work just like I did. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, like, share, do all of those things to help other people find this channel. Thanks so much for taking the time to check this out, and I'll catch you next time. Bye! This costume. Here's the stock photo that they showed to me. Oh. Much brainstorming, and you're gonna see all of the turns and why didn't this? At any rate, I'm sharing with you how wonderful. That didn't work.